Hello, Algebra 1 class. I hope you had a good break over your Thanksgiving and you're ready to go again. We're going to jump in with lesson 49, even though on Monday you're supposed to do lesson 48, but we did lesson 48 in class. We must have extra time, and I didn't want to do an extra video. So we're going to start in here. In lesson 48 we did adding polynomials, where you added the like terms together. In lesson 49 we're going to multiply polynomials. I'm going to start out with example number 2, just to show you something, and then we'll go back to multiplying polynomials. This is multiplying. This is a monomial. Remember we talked about the different types of polynomials? This is a monomial and this is a binomial. And we've done this before. What we would do is take this term times this term and this term times this term. So we would multiply, we would get 4. The bases are the same, so we add our exponents. Minus 4x times minus 2 would be minus 8x. So that's how we would do it when you have a monomial times a binomial. The problem comes when you have a binomial times a binomial. Now the way the book teaches this is they tell you to take the 4x times both of these two guys. Let's just do it the book way. Let's try it. So we're going to take the 4x times both of these guys, and so we're going to get 12x squared. 4x times minus 2 is minus 8x. And then you would take the 5x times both of these guys, like that. And so we get plus 15x. 5x times minus 2 would be minus 10. And then we would combine our like terms, so we get this, so we get 12x squared plus 7x minus 10. Now that's all fine and good, except for there's a way that most textbooks use to multiply two binomials together, and the method is called FOIL. So you have to remember what FOIL stands for. FOIL stands for F for first, O for outer, I for inner, and L for last. First, outer, inner, last. I really like to teach this in person because we can get our fingers out and we point to the first, then the outer, the inner, and the last. But since we don't have class, I'm going to teach it just using this video. So what you do is you take your two binomials, 4x plus 5 times 3x minus 2. First thing we're going to do is multiply the first 2 in each term together. So this is our first. That's our first. So we multiply 4x times 3x and we get 12x squared. Then we do our outer terms, the outside ones, these two together, and we would get minus 8x. Then we multiply our inner terms. See, these are inside, these are our inners, these are our outers. 5x times 3x is 15x. And then we multiply our last terms in each one together and get minus 10. You can see we get the same thing. We're going to get 12x squared plus 7x minus 10. We're going to get the same answer, but doing it the FOIL method will help us later when we start unfoiling them, when we start tearing them apart, when we take something like this trinomial that we get and we break it back into its factors. So I want you to do it the FOIL method. We multiply the first terms in each one together, we multiply the outer terms together, the inner terms together, and then the last terms together. What usually happens is these two terms in the middle are like terms, so we can add the coefficients together and get our trinomial. So let's skip down and do example 3. So you notice you have a binomial times a binomial. So we're going to use the FOIL method. We're going to do our first term. First term in each one. 4x times x is 4x squared. Then we're going to do our outer terms. So that would be negative 20x. This is our outer. Then we do our inner terms and we get 2x. Whoops, I wanted to write I for inner there. Then we get plus 2x. And then finally we do our last terms, first, outer, inner, last. You have to remember that, first, outer, inner, last. If we were in class, we would just keep saying first, outer, inner, last, first, outer, inner, last. But we're not in class, so I'm not going to keep repeating myself. So 2 times -5 is -10. And then once again, these are like terms, so clean it up a little bit. So we get 4x squared minus 18x minus 10. Eventually we'll be able to do this in our head, but for right now we'll do the outer and the inner to get these two terms, and then we add them together. Let's try another one. We do our first, so we get 12x squared. So the first in each term. Our outer would be minus 20x. Our inner is plus 6x, see the inner. And our last term is 2 times -5 is -10. And we get 12x squared minus 14x minus 10. So hopefully these look easy to you and they're nothing complicated. Let's move on to the last problem. This one looks a little bit different. Whoops, you're right on myself there. Looks a little bit different, but it's the same thing. We're multiplying a binomial times itself. Now the temptation, this is totally wrong, don't ever do this, yikes, no, never, is to square the first term and get 9x squared and square the last term and get plus 4. That is very, very, very bad. Bad, 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 bad. What you want to do, the whole thing, this is times itself. So you have to rewrite this into 3x plus 2 times 3x plus 2. And then we use FOIL to multiply it. So you do your first terms, 9x squared. Your outer term is plus 6x. Your inner term is plus 6x. And your last term is plus 4. So first, outer, inner, last. And then you're going to combine your two middle terms. Now some of you might get this, is whenever you're squaring a binomial, these two middle terms are always going to be the same. So your outer and your inner is just the same as taking these two times itself and then times 2. So you could skip a step if you get that. Because these, multiply these two together and take it times 2 gives you this term. But don't worry about that now, just write it out twice and do FOIL. So that's your final answer. If you did it this way, you would not get a trinomial, you would just get a binomial there. So that's it for lesson 49, and I'll send you lesson 50 and 52 shortly.